You are listening to NSR, National Scrubs Radio, where nurses, doctors, students, and other healthcare professionals bring you stories from scrubs across the nation. Tune in today with NSR's Derek J.
So welcome to NSR, that's National Scrubs Radio. This is your host, Derek J. So my guest today, her name is Gina. She is the one that's responsible for me getting into nursing. So nursing was my second career, and she got me some scrubs so I could shadow her at the hospital. So I'm very grateful for Gina being in my life because she was the one that lit the spark. So when I shadowed Gina at the hospital, she was working in a Trauma 1 bay, okay? So she goes over time about working in a Trauma 1 center here in Florida, but then she goes overseas. She went to Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, and she talks about some of the cultural differences and some of the struggles that she had. Not all negatives, and she goes over some of the positive things that happened over there in the Middle East. But not only was she a nurse in the Middle East, she had to play first responder. The nurses over there sometimes have to go in an ambulance and go to the scene of an accident, and she describes a scene at a wedding that she'll never forget. And with all of her experience being as a trauma nurse, working in the ER in different countries in Florida, she realized that your team that you work with, there's that strong bond that you have because it's almost your family, practically your family. And she describes that feeling that she has with her coworkers. So here's Gina. Now, I've known Gina for a very long time, and some of her friends refer to her as Gina as an inside joke. She's an awesome, awesome person. Welcome to NSR, Gina. How are you doing?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great. I remember you from, you kind of got me into nursing a long time ago, and I actually have a lot of gratitude. I'm very grateful for you being in my life because you're the one that got me into nursing.
Yeah, well, being back in a trauma level 1 facility, whenever I heard anyone with an inkling of interest into what I did, I would just steal a pair of scrubs and throw it on them and tell them to come watch me for a couple hours. So I was always glad because I'm passionate about what I do. I do love being a nurse. So if someone else wants to see it in a teaching university or a teaching hospital, they were always welcoming to that as well.
So why was trauma something that you're very passionate about?
Well, I started off in nursing school. I remember I was going through my different rotations, and one of them in the beginning, the nurse said, "Don't worry about where you want to go. It will find you." And because I didn't know if I wanted to do oncology or pediatrics, those are the ones I was leaning in between. And then the moment I did my ER rotation, I was in love. I remember this one guy, he was threw up and then he was coding. And I remember having to do an NG tube and we were doing CPR and it was crazy and chaotic. And I was like, oh my God, this is where I need to be in my life right now. I don't know what it was, but I totally fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And I was at, it was like a level 3, a little bit further out. So it wasn't that big of an ER. And then after a couple of years, I really wanted to go to the trauma level 1 because we'd get the traumas dropped off at the door. We'd have to stabilize them and ship them out, and I wanted to be where they were shipped to. So
level 3 was like an appetizer.
Exactly. It gave me my legs to be a nurse, to trust that I could actually do what I'm doing. And then it was a good foundation. It was a very good foundation. But then I went over to that trauma level 1 and I did love it. I loved it very much, but it really takes a toll on you after a while.
Yeah, I've said this on the show before, a certain theme where there's a shelf life for nurses sometimes, depending what unit you work.
Right.
To work in a level like a trauma 1 for 20, 30 years, I mean, you're talking about a very small percentage of people that could actually do that.
Absolutely. And I feel, you see really, really hard things. There's a lot of really bad things that go on in the world. And, sometimes you just need to take a step away and stay grounded. Otherwise, you can get caught up in vices or you could get caught up in bad things just to get your mind off of it. And then you've just completely lost your footing. So I did it for 6 years, trauma level 1, and then I moved overseas. To really throw a wrench in it.
That talking about avoiding. Now you weren't really avoiding, but that was a huge change. I mean, you didn't just go overseas. People were thinking, "No, okay, where did she go? Did she go to Europe?"
I went to Saudi
the Middle
Arabia.
East.
Yep.
So how was the experience transitioning from working in Florida to going to the Middle East?
Well, It was very interesting. I'm
Yeah.
very headstrong, and so I wanted to prove the world wrong that Saudi Arabia wasn't this awful place. And I went there and found out, well, maybe some people know what they're talking about, and it's very, very different. It's very difficult. There are lovely people there. Let me preface it with that. But the rules there are
Yeah.
somewhat archaic, and it's almost like I went back into the dark ages, but with cell phones. And
Right.
like the women can't drive. Women have to stay covered. Women can't be educated unless their father says they can. Women can't travel. They can't go to school. They can't. There's a lot of things, and being
Right.
a woman to move halfway around the world with her career, there's a level of independence there. And to go to Saudi Arabia, all of that independence is stripped from you. And then you have to see
Right.
half the population who will never be afforded any sort of independence like that. So it was very difficult perspective wise to go from Tampa, Florida, owning my own place, driving to and from work that I loved, and having friends and traveling around the world, to going somewhere where I couldn't drive and had to be covered from head to toe and couldn't talk, couldn't make eye contact with the right certain people. Like there was a lot of rules, and it was
Right.
very difficult, especially in the nursing practice. Like people didn't want to change out of their clothes. Well, how can you assess them if they don't take their clothes off? And it was very difficult.
Wow.
Or when
I didn't think about
yeah,
that. Yeah.
when yeah, like if we had a male doctor and a woman comes in with an earache, they don't want to move their face cover or their hijab to let them look at their ear or their mouth. Well, if you can't assess those simple things, then you can't tell them if they have an ear infection.
Right.
Or
Right.
Ramadan is their holy month, which I completely get and respect. They cannot consume anything by mouth from sunrise to sunset. But if they have sickness, like let's say they're diabetic and now they're becoming hypoglycemic, they don't want to take medicine because they don't want to break their fast for Ramadan. But I'm a nurse, so I automatically want to fix them, but they don't want it because of
Right.
religious. So, there was a couple different facets there that I had to work through because my brain just did not get it. But, I was in a different country,
Well,
so I was
you
learning.
were wired being a nurse here in the U.S. in Florida, so I can only imagine. And plus, like being in the ER, your assessment sometimes coming through the door is like, okay, are they walking, breathing, talking? What's going on,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And they're over there, and it's like you can't even see their body.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. Yeah. So, what were some of the other challenges that you had, maybe as a nurse, working in Saudi Arabia?
Well, I mean, those were the biggest ones, but one that really struck me is how women are really second-class citizens. Sometimes
Okay.
husbands would bring their wives in. I remember there's this like 18-year-old girl that came in the middle of the night. She had abdominal pain, very vague. And then we asked if it's possible that she could be pregnant. We can't talk to her. We have to talk to the husband. And he said, no, 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 not yet. She's just my retirement gift. Literally, he
Wow.
referred to her as a gift, not a
Oh my
human,
gosh.
not his third wife,
Right.
which she was his third wife, but a gift. And it's just that's how they would refer to them. They'd refer to them as their property. There was one time it was just a toddler. Toddlers fall and they get, need to get sutures or something, and he like busted his chin
Right.
open. Perfectly normal situation. Toddler's crying because we have to hold him down so the doctor could suture his chin. Again, perfectly normal. The mother is now upset because she's upset for her child crying and in pain. The father does not like that the mother is crying. Not anything else. That's what he's most upset about. She won't stop crying, so he hits her, slapped her across the face right in front of me and the doctor and the other nurse. And I was on orientation. I was there literally 1 month, and my preceptor just looked at me and shook her head no. And they were afterwards, they're like, you can't say anything. That's his property. You can't say anything.
I can't imagine. I mean, your hands must have felt like they're tied behind your back, and you can't do. Because I feel like in here in the U.S., you would be able to,
Right.
call security. Maybe the police will be involved. Who
Right.
knows? But so, what were some of the? I understand the challenges from some of the cultural perspective, or But what what were some of the good things that you saw over there working over
Okay,
there?
well, they respect Americans very much. So at first I'm an enigma because I'm of Puerto Rican descent, so I'm tan with dark hair. So they think I'm Arabic, which is fine. And then
Right.
when they hear me speak, they're like, "Oh, okay, you're not Arabic." So then they try to go through the
Right.
countries. I get India a lot, a South African, but they never think I'm American. So I say I'm American, and they don't believe me, and we go back and forth until they hear my accent, and then they're like, "Oh, America, we love America, yay, Barack Obama."
Right.
They love the movies, they love the Kardashians, they love all that stuff. So they were very accepting. Once I got to get through a couple layers, but once I get through those layers, they're very accepting people, they're very giving people. So I accidentally complimented a patient's ring one time, and she took it off and gave it to me because that's what they do. Yeah, if they know there's something there that you like, they will just give it to you. And I went over to one of the doctors I work with. He was Saudi Arabian. He had us over, and he cooked a meal with us, and he showed us how they cook their chicken and their rice underground on this little pit. It's a really cool thing. And they're just very,
Right.
very giving. They will give you everything, all of their clothes. They will give you their money. They will give you everything. And they're very giving. They're very big, loving family units. Another
Gotcha.
thing is they do not have one nursing home in all of Saudi Arabia because they take care of their elderly. It's a very important thing. It's part of the whole family process. When you are too old and you cannot take care of yourself, they will move you right next to them. They'll put everything there. They'll have nurses come in. They'll have beds with you. But there is no nursing home that is unheard of there. They will take care of you until your last breath. And they're very accepting of the whole life and death process. And they say, it's Allah's will, and that's how it is. But that's another thing that's very different than here. You have many elderly people, they get Alzheimer's or whatever it is, and they're just thrown in a home and forgotten about. So
That's a totally different system than
right,
we have
right.
here.
So it's like a clan or a tribe mentality. So they
See, I feel like in at least people I know, or like in my family, it's like the elders don't want to bother their kids.
right.
Like we don't want to bother the kids,
True.
living,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know, and I get that it's different in all different, cultures and stuff. But so how does someone get into nursing in the Middle East? Like, how did you even apply? What was the application process? Who did you go to?
Well, it was just a perfect storm of events. The CEN had their big annual thing in Tampa, and the recruiter for this company was there. So that's how it all came about. And so I applied directly with the company. They shipped me out to their head office in the States. I had my interview there. And then, it was very rigorous, intensive background check, like 6 months long. They wanted to know everything down to your last bowel movement. Okay, maybe that's not that much. But they wanted to know everything, your
Right.
physical health, your mental health. They wanted all of these different doctors to sign off on you, all of this stuff. And then once they approved you, then they fly you back out there, and then they do an orientation, which is like another couple days long because it's a very different world over there, and they appreciate that it's going to be difficult for us. So they try to get us mentally prepared. And then once after that, so I applied in December. I finally got out there in August. So that's an 8 month long process. And then once
Wow.
I got out there, that orientation was another 2 to 3 weeks long. And the first week alone was about cultural differences. You're not here to change things. This is how it works. This is how they like it. If you can't handle it, then you shouldn't be here type thing. And this is what you've got to do. Don't make eye contact with men. Don't wear these type of clothes, blah, blah, all that stuff, which is difficult. So they understand that, and they kind of ease us into the process slowly and gently because it's not an easy life to live.
Now, did you work trauma over there as well in the ER?
I worked in an ER. Yeah, it was a freestanding emergency department. We had our own ambulance. Actually, we had 7, and we had paramedics on duty. So whenever anyone was sick enough, we would take them to our main campus hospital, and that was about an hour drive, and the nurses would take them. And sometimes, if there was ever anything catastrophic out in the town and they didn't have enough paramedics, nurses would jump in the ambulance and go out with the paramedic as well, which was
Did you ever do
I
that?
did. I was there. Let's see.
You're like a first
Yes,
responder
yeah.
then.
So I took
That
some
makes sense.
training, pre-hospital, life supports, different courses like that to kind of help me. So I was there. Let's see, it was like September, and I just come
Yeah.
in August. So mind you, I'm a little over a month now. And there's allegedly a fire in the town, and there's only one paramedic
Okay.
working that night. So he and myself hop in the ambulance and we take off. Well, we get to a place about 15 minutes out of town, and it's like now completely dark. And there are men, and there are white outfits, which they call thobes. So it's almost, we would
Okay.
look at it like it's a dress, but it's all white. Anyways, they're all running at us, and they're dirty and they're bloody, and it's
Oh man.
chaos. And I feel like it's just, I've jumped out of my own skin and I'm now inside of like CNN reporting in a war zone. So,
This is different than being a nurse where the patients come to you. You know what I
yes.
mean? Where
Yeah. Oh,
now
yeah.
you're on the scene.
Yeah. This was my
Wow.
very much, I don't think we're in Kansas moment. And
Right.
we get out of the, I don't speak Arabic at this point. Now I've learned enough, but at this point I did not, neither did my friend.
Right.
So we get out of the ambulance only to find out that it wasn't as much of a fire as someone, it was a wedding ceremony. And
Okay.
in what they do there is they shoot guns in the air because they're very excited at the end of the ceremony. They accidentally shot an electrical wire, which then fell down on the top of the tent that the women and the children were
Oh
in.
man.
That went on fire, and then the live wire landed in front of the only exit because, like, the walls were all cement. So it was like 3 walls of
Okay.
cement and one little entrance. So people were either dying by the fire of the roof coming down on them, or they were being electrocuted to death as they were
Electrocuted.
exiting over this live wire. So there were dead people everywhere. It was absolute chaos. And before we got there, someone figured out to take their car and ram it through the wall so people could get out that way. But yeah,
Oh my
exactly.
God.
So it was crazy. They were carrying people, they were throwing them in trucks to come to our little freestanding ER. Someone just shoved someone in our car and we tried, or in our ambulance, and we tried to resuscitate her. It was crazy. I remember when I first got out, it was slow motion. It was Arabic everywhere. And over here in one area, I see a wheelchair, but no human was in it. And then next to it, I saw one shoe, and I thought, "Where's the other shoe?" It makes no
Yeah.
sense because there were dead bodies everywhere. But that was that was like
Right.
what I fixated on, and I apparently walked over that live wire, not knowing because of Arabic and language translation, until someone from the police, they pointed and they're like, "Don't walk over it." Like I could have been a victim at that moment. It was in
Oh.
in America or in other societies, they have things that you go through to make sure that the situation and the scene is safe for you to exit.
Say.
But there, it was nothing. I was in the middle of nowhere, and it was of chaos, and it was crazy. It was
And not only that is that you don't speak the
right.
language,
Yeah, it was very difficult. Yeah,
and you're trying to communicate and figure out, and then you're in a moment where there's just complete chaos, trauma everywhere around
yeah.
you. How do you triage
Well,
patients? Like, I mean, how do you even,
theoretically, if
you
we
know?
had more paramedics, we're supposed to stop and then start a triage and then have people come back and then ambulances going back and forth, which at that
Right.
point we did have other nurses hopping in the ambulance, coming back and forth. But so many people also just threw their family members in a truck. There was one truck that showed up at our ER with 5 people in it. So it's like
Mm,
it was very difficult to gain any sort of being in control of that situation.
right.
Like no matter how much training we had, it was impossible because of language barrier and just the fact that they were just taking the patients themselves.
Now, after all this
Hmm.
happened, and you go back to where you're living at in Saudi
Yeah.
Arabia, did you feel really isolated? Because like now you're home, like you're away from home back in the
Yeah.
U.S. Or like how did you cope with that after that event?
Well, one thing I noticed overseas is that nobody has their family. We are all separated. So the friendships and bonds that you make with your coworkers are much deeper than you just make when you move to a new hospital here in the States. That's because we become each other's family. And I became very close with my coworkers that I worked with in Saudi Arabia or other Americans that lived on my compound. And that's kind of how we survived, was just with each other. And I just got married a couple months ago, which this was 4 years ago. And many of those people that I had met in Saudi Arabia came to my wedding because we are still friends. We have created a bond that will last, hopefully, throughout the rest of our lives. And we still keep in touch because
That's
that's the
awesome.
way we survive, is through each other and like leaning on each other and becoming each other's friends and family members.
Congratulations on being
Oh,
married.
thank you. Thank you.
No, I mean, I can see that because all of y'all are going through the same experience. And I feel like if you are all going through the same experience, that cohesion, that part of where you're just bonding, like you said, that bond is very strong.
Yes.
So, and it has to be because you rely on
Mhm.
them for support. So, after Saudi Arabia, where did you go next? Like, did you come back to the U.S. or what was the next stage for you?
No, I thought, this adventure isn't over. Let's keep going. hopped on over to the United Arab Emirates, which is a country next to Saudi Arabia known for Dubai. And another one of the Emirates is called Abu Dhabi. That's the capital. And I got a job there.
Okay.
Cleveland Clinic opened up a new hospital there. So I opened up
Oh,
and I
wow.
started the emergency department in this 20 plus floor, gorgeous hospital. I will never work in a hospital as beautiful as this one. I mean, it was marble everywhere. We had a VIP floor. We had a royal suite. There was gold decorated. Like there was just a parking garage for the royals because we did treat the royals, and it was air conditioned, and that elevator was gold. Like
That's
it's like the
ridiculous.
money of the Middle East meeting, just how big their things are and how they decorate things.
So besides the royal treatment of the
Yeah.
hospital, how would you describe your time in Abu Dhabi is different than Saudi Arabia?
It was a little bit more watered down. So the way Abu Dhabi is, it's still a very similar. It's the desert. It's hot, but they're a Muslim country as well. But the difference is the women do not have to cover their faces. The women are encouraged to get educated. They are driving. They are encouraged to work as well if they want to. And just those fundamental differences makes a massive difference in the entire society. And so I met a lot of lovely, lovely Emirati women and men that believed in a little bit more equality for their entire society, and that showed in just their architecture there and their business opportunities there, and just all of the stuff there. They have the biggest building in the world, and they have the world's only 7-star hotel, and they have all of these amazing feats there in the middle of the desert that you wouldn't think they should, but they do, and
Right.
they're very proud of it, as well as they're very proud of how the women and the men equally can both move in society, further themselves, better themselves.
So taking all your experience, you worked in the trauma one, you worked in the ER, you're kind of like a first responder in Saudi Arabia if you think about
Yeah.
it, and then you worked in Abu Dhabi and you traveled. What advice would you give to a nurse that's maybe considering going into trauma?
Oh, well, you've got to have thick skin. Absolutely thick skin. You will see the most horrific things, from abuse to just accidents or whatever it is. It'll be very difficult for you. And in the matter of seconds, you have to go to lunch break, or you have to go take care of someone with a cold, or take care of someone with cancer. Like you've got to be able to compartmentalize it. And it
Right.
can't really you can't wear it on you. You've got to kind of just like put it in its folder and move on to the next one. Another thing I know is, and I can't do it in the PACU as much, or I couldn't even do it in the Middle East as much as in a trauma unit. Sometimes you bark at each other, but it's for the better good of what the patient needs, or for the better good of the situation at the moment. And you don't get offended by it. You just know, okay, she's at a higher acuity of me at the moment, and she
Right.
needs this to take place. And I'm not going to get offended because she's not yelling at me. She's just yelling something needs to be done. Like me barking, I need
Right.
this right now. No, please, no, nothing like that. No. And it gets done, and you work as a family. And at the end of the night, you go for beers, or at the end of the morning, which, because I work night shift most of the time, you go for beers, and you'd be a family, and you wouldn't hold it against the other person. Like, I'm so upset that you yelled at me last night. No, it doesn't work that way. Like, you move on. Everybody is fighting in the trenches. You're at war, and you are all trying to win together as a unit. So sometimes someone might be a little bit rough around the edges, I will say, but you got
Yeah.
to let that go. You cannot hold on to that, or you will not survive in a trauma unit. Absolutely not.
So the bond there is strong as well
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
you need it.
Yeah.
You kind of went over some stories in Saudi Arabia, but were there any stories back home while you're doing trauma that kind of stuck out to you in the ER?
Oh, wow. Well, let's see. How much time do we have? Yeah, there were many, many different situations, but I'd say the one that probably sticks out the most, or at least it's a fan favorite, is the time that I tackled an inmate at my trauma level, at my trauma center.
You tackled
Oh,
it,
yeah,
mate?
I tackled him.
You
Yeah. I tackled him and put him in a headlock, but let me put it in reference so I don't get in trouble for this. So at
okay?
my hospital, we had a thing with the jails and the prisons. If there was anything wrong with the inmates, they would come to us. I don't know how that works, but I just know we had them all the time. So
Okay.
there was an inmate who said he fell, and because of falling off of like this box, he was trying to do something with the TV. He was now
All right.
paralyzed. Okay, so
Okay.
he was a little bit further away, so that he had to come in a helicopter because at this point he is now considered a trauma alert. And to
Okay.
go in the helicopter, the guard that would have come weighed too much. So they had to give him someone
Oh.
who weighed less, which was a female guard somewhere around there. So that would be problem number one. Problem number two, she didn't have a gun, so they just gave her a gun.
Oh.
Right. So I don't know why. I don't really know how the ins and outs goes, but I just know that this has created
Yeah.
a perfect storm of a bad situation. So this patient comes in. He's a trauma alert, so the pager goes off and 20 million people show up and we do the whole thing, assessment head to toe. And I'm the primary nurse, and my nursing spidey senses, so to speak, are tingling. Like, I do not believe this guy.
Right.
I do not think he is paralyzed. He is playing the part very well, all the ways down
Right.
to the shoving a finger in his rectum to see if he had rectal tone. He played it all very well.
I'll tell you, this guy knows way too much if he's like, look, I don't have any tone.
Yeah, I mean,
You know?
it could just be because he was in prison. I don't know. I don't ask questions. Nonetheless,
Okay.
he
Got
is
it.
passing all of the tests to make it look like he's paralyzed, but I still do not believe him. In my mind, I'm
Right.
thinking, oh, he's just out and he's lying. He's going to fall off the bed, break an arm, and sue us. Like, that was the worst I thought. I did not think any worse than that. Obviously, I was not creative enough. So we do the whole assessment. Everything looks fine. So now we're taking him over to CAT scan, and we get a CAT scan of his head and his neck and everything. Everything looks fine, but now we're waiting on the results. We bring him back. He's now in a room where there's not as many people, but I do not trust him.
Right.
He only has that one female guard. Another one is on the way. Whenever they're inmates, there needs to be two. One in the room without a weapon, one outside of the room with a weapon. That's what I learned after the fact. So
Gotcha.
I'm keeping my eyes peeled. I'm like, I just don't trust this guy. I don't know what it is. So I'm about to go in the room next to him to help this patient get in a wheelchair so she could use the restroom. Still always looking at this room. Well, all of a sudden,
Yeah.
when he went from CAT scan to back to the room, the female guard only shackled one foot. She should have at least shackled two appendages, meaning one arm and one
right.
foot of opposite sides or something like that. She did not. She forgot the arm. I didn't know that, obviously. So he flies off the bed with his foot still attached and starts strangling her.
Oh my gosh. Like literally one leg up and he's
Literally,
standing up and
he
trying to...
flew down because she was sitting at the foot of the bed. So it's like his
got
foot
it.
was still
Okay.
on the bed, so it wasn't too far away. I'm with another nurse, and this was definitely a fight or flight example because I decided to...
And you fought.
I fought, and she took off the other way. But she called for security, so it worked out. But anyways, at this moment, I said, I knew he was lying. So I take off, and I don't even know what came over me, but he's literally strangling her and now he's going with his right hand down for her gun. So I tackle him the other way because I think he's a man, I'm a woman, I'm only 5'2". I got to be smarter because I'm not going to be stronger.
Right.
So I go further away so his left foot is still attached to the bed. And, I'm like, I think that would work. So now I'm holding him on the ground and I've put him in a headlock. So I used to, at this point, my friend used to make fun of me. I had 5 pens in my pocket, 3 black pens, 1 highlighter, 1 permanent marker, all in size order. He takes one of the pens and starts to go for my neck. So now I'm screaming, he's going for my jugular. I don't know why I have so many words at this moment, but then other nurses come. I feel them jump on top of me to hold this guy down. A paramedic comes, gets the pen away from him. And eventually we're able to take care of the situation. We get him in the bed. We now put leather restraints on all 4 appendages. The second male guard has finally arrived with the shackles a little bit too late. And his sentence gets upped because now he's trying to escape and harm and all this stuff. But at that moment, I didn't think he could get her gun and shoot me, as has happened in ERs recently. I thought, oh my God, I need to tackle him now and put him in a headlock. I don't know. I think it's because I had 2 older brothers and that's what they did to me as a kid. So I thought, let's play. I don't know. So I got an accommodation, and in the letter, it literally said I put him in a headlock. And my friends still laugh about that.
Did it say he's going for my jugular in the letter as well?
But it should have, because I feel like that was key.
It should have. Well, Gina, I appreciate you coming on to NSR National Scrubs Radio today and telling us all your nursing stories. You're welcome back anytime. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it very much, and I look forward to chat again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to NSR, National Scrubs Radio, with your host, Derek J. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit Facebook and Twitter at Nat Scrubs Radio. We'll catch you next time.